at 6:30, and so this is the regular meeting of the Township Council for the month of, it's actually June, isn't it? And next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Smale that Municipal Council approves the agenda as presented, I believe.
Those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. And item 3 on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Are there any disclosures here this evening? No disclosures declared. Minutes will so indicate. Item number 4 on the agenda is delegations and presentations. And the first delegation is from Canada Post, Diane Mitchell. And Diane, welcome to the council meeting.
Hello.
Sorry we scared away your audience.
Okay. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. My name is Diane Mitchell. I represent the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on the topic of retaining and expanding postal services and protecting our public post offices. Since UPW first appeared before councils in January 2014, Canada Post had embarked on a program which planned for the removal of door-to-door delivery from all of the residential addresses across Canada. Between then and 2015 federal election, 830,000 addresses lost home mail delivery. This was met with a storm of protest, with almost 900 municipalities passing resolutions and/or letters condemning these service cuts. So great was the backlash that the loss of door-to-door delivery became a significant issue in 2015 federal election. Both the Liberals and the NDP made commitments to stop the conversion and restore home mail delivery. After the election, the federal government placed an immediate moratorium on the conversion to community mailboxes, pending a review of Canada Post by the Standing Committee on Government Operations. The committee held hearings in 22 communities. They heard from municipal governments, businesses, and a wide range of affected organizations, community groups, and individuals. The committee produced a 185-page report entitled The Way Forward, which made 45 recommendations. A summary of these recommendations were included in our presentation package. While there's not enough time to discuss all of these recommendations, I'd like to draw your attention to several of them that focus on retaining and enhancing postal service to our communities. Recommendation number 23, in which the community calls for Canada Post to continue the moratorium on community mailbox conversion and develop a plan to reinstate door-to-door delivery for communities that were converted after 3rd of August 2015. Number 20, Canada Post review the impact on efficiency of delivery before implementing strategies such as local processing via centralized processing. Number 29, that Canada Post examine ways to provide more services and meet service level commitments in all type of communities using its existing retail network. Number 39, Canada Post explore location-specific opportunities for post offices to act as community hubs and respond to the local needs of its surrounding community. Number 36, Canada Post preserve its post offices along with the associated moratorium noted on the closures of rural post offices, even in areas where there are franchise postal outlets. It is important to remember that Canada Post is a public service with added bonus that we are also self-sustaining. Recently, John West, Canada Post Senior Vice President, General Counsel, Corporate Secretary, commented that his corporate legal team needs to step away from the notion of being a cost center and instill the notion that we are added value service. I wish Canada Post would apply this kind of thinking to our postal services. We would like to thank councils for all past resolutions which called on the federal government to reverse the service cuts by Canada Post and look at other ways to generate revenue like postal banking. It has been noticed that 29% of Canadians would probably most definitely use a postal bank. 183 out of 201 countries have financial services through a postal bank. 1 billion people hold a checking account in a post office. It's noteworthy that CUPW has received broad support for a proposal for expanded and innovating services such as postal banking, senior check-in service, electric charging stations, and internet services and other ideas. On January 24th, 2018, the federal government announced its vision for the renewal of Canada Post. The announcement partly answered some of the recommendations of the parliamentary committee, but left many others unanswered. The government did announce that it was terminating Canada Post's program of converting door-to-door delivery to community mailboxes. However, all the households who lost door-to-door delivery won't, as promised by the Liberals, get back their service. That's close to 1 million households across the country. The many resolutions adopted by local governments across Canada have no doubt influenced the federal government to put an end to the conversion of door-to-door delivery into community mailboxes. Because of that, some 4 million households can now rest easy that their door-to-door service will not be cut. We have great momentum. Let's continue to push to better our communities. The government also asked Canada Post to seriously explore new services. Many innovative and forward-thinking ideas have been put to the committee in this report, with those that maintain and restore cherished value-added services. These will enhance our national infrastructure, social community networks, and strengthen economic viability of our communities, especially in rural areas. Canada Post should apply the advice given by David Lesueur, councillor for the City of Brockville, Ontario, in his June 2017 presentation to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities on revising rural economies through innovative solutions. He states the best way to predict the future is to create it. On behalf of the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, we ask that the Council of Edward Burke Cardinal help create the future and send a letter to the Honourable Minister Carla Quattro supporting the recommendations of the Standing Committee to retain, enhance, and expand these important postal services, as well as the importance, if you have lost it, restoring your door-to-door delivery to your communities. Thank you for your time and your support on this important issue. If you have any questions, I'd be willing to answer.
Thank you very much, very crisp. I just wanted, before we start, you highlighted, I believe it was 6 or 5 of the recommendations. Did you just review those numbers again? I think it was,
Number
you started
20,
with 23, 20?
20, 29, 39, 36.
And 23?
23, yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Just wanted to get those in my notes. Anyone else have questions for Ms. Mitchell?
Can I just say thank you for bringing this forward? It's something that's got to stay at the forefront in terms of economic development for rural communities, because we need our post office. Thank you.
Going down the other end?
I just wonder, the models of, if I may, through the mayor, the models of postal banking that have been successful in other countries, what do they look like? Like the actual post office has like a service that is similar to a bank, walking into a TD or a Bank of Montreal?
Exactly the type of, there's all different kind of models that you have across the country. The UK has a different model, the Australian has a different model, Japan. We used to have banking in our post offices up until 1968. That was a savings account. And I believe that all we did was close down. The laws, nothing was changed. It was the big banks that came and asked us to close down. They said they can give a better service. That was back in '68. But now we're going into 2018 where all the big banks are pulling from the small rural towns, and they're even pulling their ATMs out now. So we believe that we can reopen the same regulations that we had. For as far as services are concerned of what we can roll out into our post office, if that was decided that yes, we could have a small bank into our post offices, then that would be sitting down between the government, Canada Post, and the union on how and what they will roll out. I know that we do some banking services already, like not checkings and savings, something like that, but we do credit cards.
No, thank you very much for your presentation.
Okay, so I just wanted to follow up on the concept of postal banking, because I am familiar with it. Not that I was around when it was closed down, or using it. But, so basically your union would be in favor of that?
Our union's in favor of that, basically because it's a service that's being provided by many countries around the world. And right at the moment, the rule is being forgotten. I've talked myself to many MPs, where I've talked about banking to them, and many, many of them have told me to back off on urban where it comes to banking, because the big banks will give us a pushback on it. But to move forward with the rule, because rule is being forgotten, and there's a space there for us to come in on it.
Well, if I can just so you know, I mean, we've lost our Toronto Dominion Bank from the village of Cardinal a number of years ago, and we've just now recently lost the Royal Bank here in Spencerville.
Yes,
So-
I'm aware of that.
Yeah, so these little communities, I think you have a real case there. You know, for some just basic banking services, savings accounts, and maybe even checking or postal orders, that kind of thing, you know what I mean? I wanted to thank you for your presentation, and I think we'll take your presentation under advisement here and see what we can come up with in terms of a complimentary response to your presentation. Did you want in again?
I was just gonna say, Mr. Mayor, I may be out in left field here with this one, but she used, a key word she used was hubs, community hubs. And I got thinking about, you know, that I know it's two different jurisdictions, provincial and federal, but, you know, for banking in our town, that's being closed. And we've got a post office here, which is still open, but we know the school board is looking at market value for community hubs. If people can go into those schools and use, I'm just saying, would it be feasible, you know, to save? I know the federal government's worried about money and savings to taxpayers. Is it feasible for some of these vacant schools to have a post office as part of renting space at market value, which would save them, you know, the building and upkeep and so forth, with the school boards, and providing a banking service within a school in some way? It just, the word clicked, and I said, how can, you know, is there some way that we can, you know, would that be feasible? Like, I'm thinking of South Granville perhaps, got more space, a lot more vacancy, and could the post office work there, and, you know, they have the bank there, but again, you've got more banks in town, so. Anyway, but let's say here, you know, there's only 110 kids, I think, at Centennial, and we've got a bank closing, we may have vacant space there. I'm just thinking out loud, okay?
In Lansdowne, they have also lost their bank, and we'll be going there, I believe, on the 29th to do like a little picket info in front of the post office with nice big signs saying this could be your next bank. And so just give information to the town a little bit. So if ever your town is interested in something like this as well, just give me an email, and we can come and do the same thing.
But your present position is that you think that the post office should be able to offer that banking service within their existing locations?
Yes.
With their existing staff?
Yes.
With their existing staff?
Yes.
And can you give me kind of a rough idea of the services? It would be obviously savings accounts.
Like I said, as far as services are concerned, I can't come out and tell you exactly what services that they would provide, because that would be something that the government and Canada Post needs to sit down and, but as far as big loans or, I don't think that would be, that would be something of the post office. That, if they went that way, the only thing I would suggest is it would have to be something done through the internet with a bank, I would imagine, or with a, like the CS Co-op or.
Right. Okay, you're not talking though about the loan business. Deputy Martel?
No, I think that though, when you talk banking service, you're talking pre-1968. What I believe what you said is that under the current mandate, they did not remove those services
That's right.
that were allowed. So whatever those services were prior to 1968 are the services that might be considered for
That's
the,
right.
right, so, and all that was like a savings account.
Basically, yes. It was your basic banking needs.
Okay, well, once again, Diane, I wanted to thank you for your presentation, and as I say, we'll put this on an agenda for one of our committee meetings and see what we can come up with in terms of a complimentary response.
Thank you very much. If you choose to write a letter, would it be possible to receive a copy of your letter?
If we choose to, you shall get one.
Thank you very much.
I'm assuming that you've left your business card with the staff?
They have my email, but I can leave a business card as well. I do have one. And I also left you some bags with all our information inside if you wish to read it as well. There's also something for elder care inside.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Diane, really appreciate it.
Have yourself a good
You
evening.
too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda is 4B, which is a presentation of the auditor's report, and Mr. Ian Murphy from Morris Norris Penny, otherwise known as MNP, formerly known as CK, can't remember all the initials. Anyway, your timing is good tonight, Mr. Murphy, and you have the floor. And just before you start, I just want to make sure that council knows that late last week, the staff provided an opportunity for me to meet with Mr. Murphy, and I'd indicated several times in the past that I'd like to have a conversation with him before this public presentation tonight. So I did arrange. Now, the date that was arranged was the date when Deputy Mayor Taylor was out of town, but she returned in time to do both a South Nation Conservation meeting and arrive at our meeting with Mr. Murphy a bit late, but we have had the benefit of a private chat with Mr. Murphy, so you're up for your report, your auditor's report.
All right, thank you. Good evening. So I've got your financial statements. If you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me and I'll try to answer the best I can. So, as Pat said, we're now MNP, formerly CKDM, so we performed all the work at CKDM. June 1st, we merged with MNP, so we're issuing these financial statements under MNP, but it's a technical matter, not anything to do with an audit procedure or anything like that. So this independent auditor's report outlines responsibilities for the financial statements. So it starts with administration's responsibility. They're responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with Canadian Public Sector Accounting Standards. The auditor's responsibility is to express an opinion based on our audit. So we perform our audit on a risk-based approach, assessing the risk in various areas of the organization and tailoring our samples and audit procedures based on the risks that we identify. Based on our audit, we're prepared to issue a clean audit opinion. So on the opinion paragraph, we say that in our opinion, these financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the corporation of the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal at December 31st, 2017, the results of its operations, change in net assets, and its cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian Public Sector Accounting Standards. We didn't find any issues with the statement, so that's council, that's what you're looking to hear. You do notice there's another matter paragraph on the financial statements. That's just an explanation in relation to the merger as well, so it's just another technical matter that we have to do.
If I may, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
You said to ask questions as we go,
Yeah.
as you go along. MNP,
Yes.
what does MNP stand for?
Myers, Norris and Penny.
Myers, Norris and Penny.
Yeah. So they're a national accounting firm, the 5th largest in Canada. They started out west and they went further west and now they've started to come east.
Myers or Morris?
Myers, Norris.
Myers, okay.
Okay, thank you.
So if you turn to page 2, this gives you the snapshot on December 31st of the assets and liabilities of the township. So you'll notice not a huge change from the year before. So as auditors, we don't like a lot of change. So this is a good thing in our point of view. So we don't expect large fluctuations from year to year. Everything being constant is a relatively good thing. So your assets increased by 2% from the year before, so not a huge change. You'll notice at the bottom, we've been telling you this since public sector accounting standards came into effect, that this accumulated surplus is not your actual surplus, so
Yeah.
don't get too excited. But it's our surplus that we report on. Turning the page, your results of financial activities. So you'll notice the revenues and expenses are pretty well right in line with budget, so you control the expense lines, you don't have as much of a control over the revenue lines, so the amount that you do control, you're within less than 0.5% of budget, so very good job in keeping your expenditures right in line with budget. You can't get much closer than that for the year. So under PSAB, your surplus was $3,098,000. Again, that's our surplus and not the surplus that you would like to see. So we do have a reconciliation of what the township surplus actually was. So if you turn to page 22, that brings, what we do is reconcile the surplus on your statement of financial activities down to your actual surplus for the year, what you budget on, so.
No, are you reducing it then to, from an overall surplus, which includes cash and assets, down to, on page 22, are you reducing it down to the cash surplus?
That's right, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, because the surplus of 3 million doesn't take into account any principal payments on long-term debt, transfers in or out of reserves. It doesn't account for purchase of capital assets, any improvements to infrastructure, that kind of stuff. So you see the reconciliation items there, and it brings you down to an overall deficit of 61,000 for the year.
now, I'm on page 22, am I?
Yes,
Because I can't see that number, oh, 61,410,
yes.
and then that's an operating deficit you're
That's
calling?
that's a total deficit for the year, and that's made up of 3 different items. The library board, which actually had a $1,900 surplus, the water and sewer, which had a $19,946 deficit, and the general operations that had a $43,000 deficit. And these were all covered from the reserves, so part of your budget process, any surplus or deficit gets transferred to or from the reserves to cover off the year before, so those were taken out of the various reserve accounts.
And so the overall cash surplus ends up at
But the general surplus is it's a deficit of 43,000.
43,000.
And again, that's, works out to the same as less than 0.5% of the budgeted expenditure for the year. So there's a couple other items that we typically highlight. One being the capital assets. This is the PSAB portion of it. So we draw your attention usually to how well you're maintaining your assets, with the pressures to reduce tax rates, and maybe forego capital or use up reserves. We highlight usually your spending on infrastructure and then your reserve balance. So if you look, your total additions during the year of $2,081,000, and we compare that to your amortization during the year.
Now, what page you on?
So this is page 6.
Page 6?
So the amortization is based on historical cost, so we like to see additions in excess of the annual amortization, which you'll notice in the last few years you've been doing that, so you've been able to maintain your infrastructure level on a regular basis over the last 3 to 5 years, so you're in a good position that way. Another item to look at is the net book value of it, so it kind of gives you an idea of how old your assets are, even though if you're replacing some of them, some of your older ones that may have higher costs might be older or not, so some of the items that you'll look at, water and sewer, which typically has a higher cost, you have a net book value of 5 million, you have a cost of 8, so you're still within the first half of their expected life expectancy, so, the assets are relatively,
Now, where are you getting the cost base on that? Is that?
so the first line here, the water sewer,
Yeah,
you have 8,412,000.
that's what you're taking as the cost base.
That's the historical cost of all your water sewer assets.
Okay.
And then at the bottom, 5,410,000 is the net book value, so we've estimated how long those assets will last and amortize it over that period and still have 5/8 of their life left, so you're on the better side of those, life expectancies.
Where do we see where the reserve funds are in relation to, the book value and in terms of, we're gonna have to replace these things, and we need to have the money to do it. So where do we see do you have a ratio or a?
We don't really do a ratio on assets to reserves. We typically look at reserves to operating expenditures instead, to keep an eye on the level of the reserves you should have. Because it really fluctuates the level of assets that you're purchasing. It's harder to predict, so to keep an actual percentage on the reserves is a little more difficult, but you wanna have a study that kind of outlines where you're going with your capital versus where you're going with your reserves to make sure that they're both in line.
Okay, so you say you look at the ratio of reserves to operational expenditures?
Yeah.
Reserves to operational. So where do we see those numbers?
That's the end, near the end.
That's near the end, the last couple of pages, we've got a bunch of financial ratios, so if you turn to, I don't think I have the page number.
Can I just interject for a second, while we're on tangible capital assets, Mr. Mayor, please?
Yeah.
If we look at, just to give us, I think maybe it might answer Deputy Taylor's, Mayor Taylor's concerns about how do we know the life expectancy and stuff. If you look on, I think it's page 14, and there's a section there called tangible capital assets. And it talks about, buildings, land improvements, machinery, vehicles. And you see there that we're talking like vehicles and so forth and replacement. When I saw this column, I thought, here we are talking about replacing the 1-axle or 2-axle trucks from 2001 and 2003 and so forth. And here we are with vehicles, and you're just talking maybe a truck for the recreation department or whatnot. It's 5 to 10 years, and we're talking about these major workers, heavy equipment, and looking at replacing things that are 15 years of age. So that grabbed my attention, our last discussion, in this column here, and how the accountants or the auditors look at these things and say in 10 years you should be replacing this in 10, and so that brought to mind our discussion previously about the trucks and stuff, and how even though they didn't get work, the type of work they're doing, they're old, and then I think where you're going back, I think that the mayor's, it's that maybe the last page you're talking, Mr. Murphy, is it when we get to those sections on the 5-year financial review, I think that's where you're talking about what the mayor's asking the question.
So, and through you, Mr. Mayor, if I can, for the treasurer, does our asset management plan reflect the dates used in this, in that chart referenced by Councilor Morell on page 14? So is that the same amortization schedule that we use?
Yes. They're ranges, but we have
Right.
more specifics in our plan.
So, and just if I can follow up, so in Councilor Morell's example, so a half ton that we're using for, light duty, like the Parks and Rec truck, versus like the commercial snow removal trucks. What would the amortization period be assigned for each of those? Like, what would we assign the half-ton, and what would we assign the largest truck in our fleet?
Without having that plan in front of me, through the chair, I would say the half-tons are about 7 years, and we are actually pushing the bigger vehicles to 12.
Okay,
So that's why the range, that's just a range that's being shown in
Yeah,
the
that
financial
makes sense.
statement too.
okay, thank you very much.
But I wanted to address the larger picture of that on page 14, because those amortization periods are a matter of local policy. They're not set by the Standards Bureau or the bureau that you audit for. They're determined by, as a matter of local policy. So each one of those amortization periods on that list for each one of those asset classes could be adjusted to
Right.
suit our amortization schedule, which I think is the point you're trying to get at.
Right,
Yeah, we assess whether they're reasonable,
Yeah,
but they're completely up to you,
right.
what you actually use as a.
So now, going back to the ratios that we were just beginning to get into, which is, I think you said the last page.
Yes, the very last page.
Yeah, I see now, I missed it in my review here, the reserve coverage. So reserves to operating expenses, you record us as 66%. And reserves to working capital at 2.89. 2.89 in reserves compared to working capital. Now, I'm looking across that line, reserves to operating expenses, and as I go through the years from 2017 down to 2013, it's varied from 66% down to as low as 42%. What do you, as auditors, look at as being healthy? Is every number in that range considered within your tolerance levels?
Yes, actually, we typically look for 25 to 50.
Percent?
Percent.
25 to 50%?
Yeah, so
So we've
on the very
exceeded-
low end, and depending on the size too. The smaller the municipal entity is, the closer to 25. The larger should be closer to 50. But you've exceeded them in the last couple of years. Now, we also qualify that with, it depends on what you're spending in capital in the next few years as well. So if you've got a major capital expense that's coming up that's gonna cost a couple $1 million and take a huge hit to your reserves, you're gonna need to build them up first to be over that 50%, so that when you incur that cost,
You're within the tolerance.
you're still in that range.
Go ahead, sorry to interrupt, but I'm glad that you offered the opportunity to ask questions as we went along.
Yeah. So if you turn to page 8, this kind of breaks down the accumulated surplus, so it gets into the reserves and reserve funds that we just talked about. In the middle of the page, you have your reserves, so your general reserves are set aside by council, and they total 2.3 million for the year. Then you have reserve funds, and those are set aside by either legislation, regulation, or some sort of agreement, and those total 4,208,000 at the end of the year, so. And you've set aside them in the various departments to fund future costs. You've got invested in capital assets of 28 million, which makes up a significant portion of that accumulated surplus. And then if you look up at the top, you have your operating surplus as the first line, which is 0 because that gets closed out to the reserves every year. You have a land inventory surplus that's carried forward with your industrial park that when that gets sold, finally, the final portion gets sold, those balances will be cleared off. And you have some various surpluses with the EMS building, library, and some capital for the roads department that's been carried forward to 2018 to finish the projects. And then the other large item you'll notice is the investment in the Port of Johnstown and the investment in Rideau St. Lawrence Utilities. So those represent the holding, the value, the accounting value of those holdings on December 31st.
Now, the investment in Rideau St. Lawrence Holdings, the 640,000, that's not offset someplace else with any kind of a liability, is it? These are just plain surpluses.
So those are just surplus. That's the value of your investment
Right.
At the year.
at the year end, the accounting value of it. so. And then same with the investment in the port, so if you, in theory, if you sell your investment in that, that's the accounting value that we say it's worth, not the fair market value. Same as the capital assets where we use historical cost, that's the historical cost that's kind of built up in those entities over the number of years.
And then just going back to the line total reserve funds, and now I'm looking at the heading, reserve funds set aside for specific purposes by legislation, regulation, or agreement. Now, these are specific purpose, and I believe you assured me when we had our conversation that that 4.2 million is segregated dollars.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
We're talking about the port and the, I've always, just a number to keep in mind here, I see it every year and it kind of tweaks my fancy. How much of Rideau St. Lawrence we own, what our shares divvy up to, it's 11, it says on page 16, just for, you don't have to go there, but it says, the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal owns 11.92% of the outstanding shares of Rideau St. Lawrence Holdings. So it's almost 12% that we own. I oftentimes wonder, sometimes things come across and we get 12%, we get that dividend check and that goes into the Cardinal Hydro Fund that we receive every year type thing. So just 11.92, 12%. I guess I can say 12% and feel it's fairly accurate, right? Okay, thank you. 12, okay, thank you.
So if we took that 11.9, that 640,000 as being representative of 11.92%, then the accounting value of Rideau St. Lawrence could be easily calculated at using the reduction to 1% and then times 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you look at the next page, we give a condensed breakdown of the values on Rideau St. Lawrence. So we show current assets, current liabilities, we group them by major categories. So it shows,
This page 9 now?
this is page 17.
Or page 17?
So you see the total income for the year of 130,000 roughly for Rideau St. Lawrence, and then your share is
15,000.
12% of that.
We get 15,000.
Okay, yeah.
So that's what we should be getting at
Yeah.
the AGM this year then, is that correct? That's what we should be getting at the AGM this year then when they present it, correct? In some.
That's not the dividend that you
No,
receive.
4.41%, I think, the dividend, wasn't it?
Oh, okay,
So-
all right, okay.
So the dividend is set by the
Alright.
board, by their board, and it doesn't, it sort of reflects the income, but it doesn't, it's not tied to the income.
Ah, okay,
So it's tied more to cash flow and
Alright.
that kind of stuff.
thank you, okay.
Okay.
So then if we skip to the second last page, this gets the history of the revenues and expenses over the last number of years, so just kind of highlight over the last 5 years, kind of where everything's gone. You'll notice revenues and expenses have crept up, but taxation has remained relatively constant. It's gone up 13% over 5 years, so an average of 2.7% over the year, so you're in line with the inflation over the last number of years. And that's not the actual tax rate, that's the taxation revenue that's earned. So if you actually looked at the tax rate 5 years ago versus the tax rate in 2017, it's relatively unchanged. You're at 1.199, and this year you're at 1.18, so you're actually down slightly from 5 years ago. So you're basically building off of the increase in the assessments to raise the taxation or to cover off the increase in the
And that taxation line is township taxation revenue, not counting what we collect for the school board or the United Counties.
That's right. So if you look at 2/3 of the way down, property taxes billed, this section here breaks down the total bill and your purpose versus the counties and the school boards.
Oh, yes, right, yeah.
So you notice the total bill was 9,200,000 $390,000, and your portion was $4,700,000.
I thought the upper tier, at 2.7, actually, I thought it was closer to equal to ours, but it's not. It's, not quite, it's a little bit more than half of ours. And I thought it was closer to, equal to, I'm glad to see that number. Don't know where I got that impression that was about equal. Go ahead.
Right, and that's all I was gonna highlight.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Murphy here? Go ahead.
Well, I have to find it, I just, page is that, 15 and 20, page 15 and 20. Page 15 and 20, where is it? Okay, yes, now I just wanna highlight there and ask a question, because we have something coming up further on the agenda here, dealing with liability for contaminated sites. That's in your notes. Does that specifically pertain to us in the Scott Road and the Pittston sites, or is that just part of the general overall notes that auditors put in, saying if you had, it would apply to everybody and so forth? But the liability and how you have to be prepared for it and contain and clean up and stuff and issues like that. So these can be quite significant in some cases, right, to a municipality.
Yeah.
If they are in charge of something.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, so this is a standard, clause that just came into effect 2 years ago. And it affects every municipality if they have these sites.
Right.
So you go through and there's a bunch of criteria that has to be met before there's a liability that gets recognized on the financial statements. You've got to identify that there's an environmental concern, that the contamination exceeds the acceptable environmental standards. The township is responsible for the cleanup of that site. And there's an expectation from the township that they are actually going to clean up that site. So in the case where you have a township garage and they have salt domes and there may be contamination there, and you know there's contamination there, but you're not actually gonna clean it up because it's still in use and you're not planning to get rid of that asset, that doesn't qualify as a liability under this section.
So but this does pertain to landfill sites. If we had our own landfill sites and we were filling them and so forth, our responsibility for government to deal with landfill sites. Am I correct?
Not under this section, although there's another section that falls under.
Yes, but, okay, that's
So
number 20,
that's-
where you're talking about Scott Road, is in page 20, where you're talking about our cost to deal with those.
Yeah.
Posters of those is 320. So, but my point I'm making is, when a township like ours has landfill, and we're responsible for it ourselves, the costs to the township can be very significant if there's brownfields and all these other issues you outlined in that previous note. And even closing Scott Road and the Pittston sites ongoing. We've got, I think you mentioned we're estimated to be 372,880, and the remaining estimated cost of 320,000, so forth, and that note there.
Yeah, that's over the next 10 years.
It can be, it's quite significant, that's what I'm saying, when a government looks after the local landfills. Okay, thank you, those are the points I'm.
I guess the point that I was wanting to raise with this one was, the first sentence, the township operates one solid waste landfill site, so we'll take that to be Scott Road. And these are the costs associated with Scott Road. But Pittston has been closed for a number of years, and it still has a bit of a trailing liability to it. Is the Pittston site, is the trailing liability on the Pittston site recorded here any place?
Yes.
I believe not. I think that's just the,
To Scott Road?
Scott Road.
Okay, so this note then pertains to Scott Road.
Should it be? I would think.
Well, I don't know, I know that there's some trailing liability at Pittston, but I think it's minimal, and ongoing monitoring more than closure costs, it's a monitoring cost.
Yeah, these are reflection on the 10 years post-closing of them, the closing costs, and then the monitoring for the 10 years subsequent to
Yeah.
closing. So
And Scott,
and it's just estimated, so if those costs actually on the Scott Road exceed the 320,000 in the next 5 years, that balance will be gone as well.
you're right,
Because we've estimated 320, but we're using it up as those costs are incurred.
right. And Pittston has been closed for more than 10 years, so, okay. Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to comment on tax arrears, and I lost where you touched on it, and I just wanted to go back to the, so you highlighted that tax arrears have gone up, and that obviously we need to, I would read directly from it, but I've lost my spot here. We need to,
If I can.
yeah, so the 7:30 truck stop inflates that number.
Yes.
But I guess my question is for staff through the mayor is, we, at considerable effort, have undertaken a more aggressive approach and shortened timelines for recovery of tax arrears in our term on council, and it doesn't reflect the output of your effort in the numbers on the page. So I'm just wondering if that is the result of an increase in people being delinquent and in paying, or if there's just more volume to deal with, and so if we weren't undertaking those increased efforts, if the number would be inflated, or if you have any perspective on that, because I'm just curious, because I know, and I've gotten calls from people, and we have shortened the timeline before we enter into collections, so I found that it caught my attention at first. The 7:30 truck stop issue addresses the inflated amount there, but still, for it to be the same as the 4 years previous, just, it seems surprising.
Through the chair, the new legislation came out and we made that effect from 3 to 2 during the year of 2017.
Right.
So we sent out letters in September, as we always do, to more individuals than previous years. You can't affect or collect on any of that until after the year end. So the September letter was kind of, you are going to be in this position by the year end. So it isn't until January of this year, February, where you're going to have seen a change in those values. So at year end, unfortunately, there was no major effect because staff's hands are really tied until we can activate those third-party collections, which would have activated in January of 2018.
Right, so that makes sense, but am I mistaken in, through the chair, thinking that in the year previous, and shortly after your joining the senior management team, that there was some kind of additional effort that was made? I'm not sure whether it was something further than reporting, and I don't remember offhand what it was. And I believed that we were seeing an increase in collection as a result of it, prior to the legislative change that was enacted in the fall.
Through the chair, yes, that's true. There was a greater increase in terms of trying to make collections on those, and I had set up a lot of pre-authorized payments on people.
Oh, okay.
So instead of a fulsome collection of the full arrears, we're just kind of getting those people picking away at their balances, and so
Okay.
again, it was a great effort to get a number of people on a payment plan arrangement, and we've been fairly successful. What's, as I say, is causing this big percentage change is literally the amount of fire costs that were added as a result of the fire costs related to the big commercial property. If you took those costs off, we'd be actually either at or below last year's value.
Right.
And of course, the other aspect is, of course, we're billing a little higher in terms of taxation, so the amount that's getting billed compared to other years is slightly higher, so we're actually billing more taxation, so it's kind of almost you gain a step and you take 2 steps back.
Right now, and the ratio doesn't change a lot.
And so, on my final point on that would be that we offer at no charge to our residents through the charity, the equal payments of tax bills, correct? And that is not a common service provided in other municipalities. Am I mistaken in thinking that?
It's fairly common, there are some neighboring municipalities that don't offer that service for sure.
So I just think that, you know, for, I think for first-time home buyers and new home buyers, they roll it into their mortgage, they put it in there, but but there would probably be a lot of people who don't do that, and I know that there are people who've owned their homes a long time or who rent, wouldn't have to worry about their taxes, but people who've owned their homes a long time who pay it when they get the bill in the mail, and I just wonder if it wouldn't be worth, I know it appears in our insert that you can do it, whether it's promoting it online or just trying to affect that message a little more, because we're definitely in a monthly payment economy. I would say that people set their whole budget around, you know, their car payment and this payment and that payment, and then if they get a $1,000 interim tax bill, then they can't afford to buy groceries, so they say, I'm gonna keep feeding my family and I'm not gonna pay my taxes. But they did have the money to make the payments each month, and they just spent it on something else. So I just wonder if maybe there's something to be said for increasing that effort, just for everyone's consideration, because you hear that often, that people get, oh, I don't know, you know, I just got my tax bill, I don't know what I'm gonna do. But you knew you were gonna get your tax bill, so if they were paying it through that monthly direct debit, that perhaps that would increase our success.
And the long and the short of it is they don't have to be on a plan to make advance payments either. The thing that worries me about encouraging people to add it on their mortgage payment is that the banks are notorious, in some cases, to make exceptions, but people don't know how to do the reconciliation at the end of the year. And they don't understand the reconciliation statement that they get from the bank. You know, and sometimes they end up owing the bank more than they expect to have to owe.
Yep.
So that ends up being a double-edged sword for them. If the banks are not setting that monthly payment high enough, it works to their disadvantage. Right at Christmas, well, not so much at Christmas time, but those statements generally come out in January or February. Anyway, it's an interesting thing, and I think the main thing, when you go back to your original inquiry about what has happened since the treasurer has joined us, is I think one of the main things that's happened is that we're getting out monthly, or at least bi-monthly, statements to the arrears people, where that wasn't happening before. They were not getting the friendly reminder notices that, you know, you're overdue, you're overdue, you're overdue, you're overdue. And I think that has made a big effect. It's really too bad that the 7:30 truck stop mess has kind of distorted this year's year end. But I think it'll be sorted out, at least I hope to goodness it's going to be sorted out by December 31 this year. But these things have a way of dragging on. Any other questions for Mr. Murphy? Before I thank him for his presentation here.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Ian, appreciate you coming, and I hope you'll convey our best wishes to Mr. Markle and the rest of the staff at the municipal office, and we're all looking forward to the Rideau St. Lawrence Holdings Annual General Meeting in, do we know where yet?
I don't know.
We don't know yet. Well, you can pass on to Rideau St. Lawrence that we're looking on for the annual general meeting and the dividend check.
Yeah,
Most importantly, the
yeah,
dividend check.
the latter is more.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Say hello to my friend Tom Waldo, is he still?
He's still there.
around? And how about Jamie Pollock?
Yeah.
I think Jamie deals with the Rideau.
He does the reader, yeah. He probably knows where your check is.
Yeah. One is a former student, one is a former school or college.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so now I'm moving on to item number 5 on the agenda, and item number 5 on the agenda is the minutes of the previous council meeting. Councillor Smale.
Thank you, Mayor Longstaff. second by Deputy Mayor Taylor, that municipal council receives and approves the minutes of the regular council meeting dated May 28, 2018.
You've heard the motion, we're gonna deal with business arising next. Those in favor of receiving and approving the minutes? Motion is carried. And so now we're at item number 6, which is business arising from the minutes. Does anyone have anything to bring forward as business arising? Hearing none, I'm gonna ask my own question, which is on page 3 of 8. Item number 8F. The railway taxation issue. And I just wanted to know if there's any kind of a follow-up on that, because I thought I saw something in communication from Prescott, where Prescott was taking some council action to spur the activity or the response from MPAC. That's what it was.
Through the chair, I'm not aware of that particular correspondence, but staff has forwarded the appropriating email to the individual that was indicated on all the correspondence we received pertaining to municipal railways, and are waiting to hear a response back from them.
Okay, so does that go through MPAC?
No, it goes through the Minister of Finance, I believe was the, it was provincial.
Okay, it's just that I had the impression from the article that I read that there was more to it than just submitting an application to the minister. And I'm just gonna let it go at that, and I'll follow up on it later. But I am kind of curious about it because I got the impression from the article that I read that in the case of the municipality that it was referring to, and again, I'm not sure it was Prescott, that it would be a substantial increase in the amount of taxation that they received. I think like triple what they're receiving now.
Yeah, it's just triple, yeah.
It is triple.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, if there's no other business arising, I'm about to move on. Oh, sorry?
I just had one, Mr. Mayor. It was something that came up from a resident on Cedar Grove Road when we were here at council, and I forwarded it to the Director of Operations and CEO. And you alluded to it about, in your mayor's report, the 401 detour issues with Cedar Grove Road and their, their ramifications, and, the toll it's taking, the number of transports and so forth. Is anything further been done, or is there any, I don't know, what can be done? I mean, the traffic has to have an access to get somewhere, so.
But it doesn't have to be on our roads.
If they can't go through Prescott, I know Mayor Tully's saying the same thing, so where do they go?
Well, we've agreed to the emergency detour routes. The question is how efficient they are. Now, did I report? I think I did, that we had met with Inspector Dobson.
Okay.
And we had discussed the issue of Cedar Grove Road.
Okay.
And I think we made it pretty clear to Inspector Dobson that when, and you can CAO can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think we made it very clear that if the 401 is closed on both directions, we're forced to take all of that extra traffic. We will very seriously consider closing Cedar Grove to the heavy truck traffic. They made it clear that they won't man that closure. We'll have to do it with our own forces, and they're not very happy about it. I think that's fair to say. But we're getting the same problem on Cedar Grove and on Browseville Road. And in fact, the guys get on their GPS, we're starting to get complaints on County Road 21 as well. Go ahead.
So do we need a bylaw? Do we need a bylaw change for Cedar Grove Road to start? And then we can choose to enforce our bylaw during those events? And we can erect a barricade?
That's an interesting question, and we didn't really discuss that, or did we?
Yeah, we did.
Okay, what was the result of that discussion?
The municipality can choose to pass a bylaw to restrict truck traffic on any of its local roads. The concern we have is that there are commercial enterprises on those local roads who require truck access.
So, my understanding is that that we can pass a bylaw restricting through truck traffic and permit trucks with deliveries on those routes.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's more than just deliveries, it's actual commercial enterprises including a sand and gravel company.
Right,
And so possibly that's correct, possibly that can be explored, but possibly we could discuss that at a committee meeting rather than through review of council minutes.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Okay, so could we, do you wanna have it, it's up to your committee, if you wanna have it added to that
yeah,
agenda?
no, yes, Mr. Mayor, I think we should, I actually had someone approach me, a resident of Cedar Grove approached me about it yesterday, and I had referenced the meeting that yourself and the CAO had with the OPP inspector, the detachment inspector, but, she was very concerned with the amount of truck traffic during those events, and, wasn't happy with it continuing, to say the least, and I can appreciate her concerns.
Right, and I mean, we've heard it, I mean, I've certainly heard it, and I've heard it, the same kind of thing on Brownsville Road as well.
Right.
Okay, all right, I'm about to move on then, unless there's new business, other business arising from the minutes. All right, item number 7, I'm at 7A, the Public Library Board meeting. Councillor Morel.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Barrett that the municipal council receives the minutes of the public library board meeting dated April 24th, 2018.
The motion is on the table, discussion if any? Yes, go ahead.
I've read through the minutes, and I just have a question for Councilor Morale, I'm not sure if
Through
he
the
knows
chair?
the answer, through
Yeah.
the chair. There's been discussion that the library board or staff have been making inquiries about working with TR Leger at the library, and I'm just wondering how that would unfold.
I'm not sure, that has not been clarified, there was a meeting set up, what's today, the 24th, I think last night, tentative meeting with I think the chair was going, and the CAO and a representative from TR Leger. I'm just not sure how they're working with combining the education package for the library and so forth, but I know there was an email about people wanting, attending and so forth. No, it wouldn't be last night, it might be tonight, it might be
Okay.
held on Monday, I think it was Monday night they were
Mike-
looking at. So anyway, it's, they're looking at, I don't know what the big game plan is and so forth, there are people invited to attend the meeting if they so choose, and, it's, I don't know what the model's gonna look like, or how they're gonna, work the library with TR Leger School for, kids that,
So it's kind of a new initiative.
it's kind of a new initiative between the library and I think TR Leger too,
So I just would hope that before they discuss any changes to the structure or use of rooms, or, because the library has the front part and the back offices are not library offices. The township in the past has offered them up to other services as needed. For instance, the police were in there at one time, Connect Youth was in there at one time, and I just wanna make sure that they come to
I'm sure.
staff before they decide they're gonna put up a wall or do something.
No, I'm sure.
structurally.
Look at all those, I don't know the parameters, but,
No,
just,
that's
I know
why
there was
just
an initial
little-
meeting and there was some interest.
It's great
and
to see it
It was
used.
a good tie-in between, they thought it was a good fit, I think, and then we just, who would meet that night, and I know, I think the chair, Mrs. Hoover, and the CEO was, Alexine, Mary, I guess her name is, correct? And they were to meet with the TR Leger representative.
CAO wanted to get in here.
Yeah, just to reassure the deputy mayor and the rest of council that the library CEO has already touched base with me about the meeting that they were to have, and we discussed in very broad general terms the kinds of questions that she should ask with respect to what TR Leger's needs might be and what could be provided, reminding the library folks that while the operations are theirs, the building is ours. So
Yeah,
it needs to
that's
be a
what it is.
three-way agreement if there's.
Thank you.
Okay, the minutes are on the table. No further discussion, call the question, those in favor? Motion is carried. And then 7B is the Port Management Committee meeting, Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Moved by myself, second by Councilor Smale, that the municipal council receives the minutes of the Port Management Committee meeting dated May 17th, 2018.
Motion is on the table, discussion if any. Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. And 7C, the Public meeting for the rezoning of 720-722 County Road 2. Counselor Barrett.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Morel, that municipal council receives the minutes of the public meeting for the rezoning of 720-722 County Road 2 dated June 11, 2018.
Thank you very much. Discussion of any? Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. Just give me 1 second, please. Today's the 25th. Goes there. And so then, item 7D, Committee of the Whole, Administration and Finance, Councilor Morel.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Barrett, the municipal council receives and approves the minutes of Committee of the Whole Administration and Finance meeting dated June 11, 2018.
Thank you very much. The motion's on the table. Discussion if any. Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. And then 7E, the Committee of the Whole, Public Works, Councilor Barrett.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Morel, that municipal council receives and approves the minutes of Committee of the Whole Public Works Environmental Services and Facilities meeting dated June 18, 2018.
Thank you very much. The motion is on the table. Discussion. Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. And now I'm on to item 8 on the agenda. Item 8A, a resolution of support for the Township of Uxbridge. Councilor Barrett.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Morel, the municipal council supports the Township of Uxbridge Resolution A00G, supporting Bill 16, respecting municipal authority over landfilling sites act, introduced by MVP Ernie Hartman, which calls upon the government of Ontario and all political parties to formally grant municipalities the authority to approve landfill projects in or adjacent to their communities.
Okay, and I think the reference to Bill 165 is in the briefing note. Motion is on the table. Discussion if any. Go ahead.
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to say that I think it's important that municipalities retain jurisdiction over this type of land use, and it's been pulled away, and it's been eroded with provincial policy statements. And as a lower tier municipality, we're subjected to the decision making in our official plan of councillors from in a planning process that takes in a very large area, from all four corners of the United Counties. And just like the folks in Merrickville, Wolford wouldn't want me to be, or this table to be the deciding group on whether or not windmills popped up in their downtown, I don't think that it's appropriate for anyone other than the elected officials in the lower tier to decide if a landfill is going to be permitted in its boundaries.
Well, and as someone has said before, the municipalities are creatures of the province. The province giveth and the province taketh away, and we keep trying to claw it back. And this is another opportunity to attempt to claw back some power from the province. And Hardeman has put the bill forward. I know that a lot of municipalities, I see from our correspondence packages, a lot of the municipalities are supporting that resolution. Further discussion, if any?
And just if I could, just one further point is it's often brought up, well, everyone's got to do something with their garbage, and be that as it may, I just don't want there to arise a situation where someone else gets to decide that someone else's garbage gets to go here and we've got to pay to put ours there with it. So I think that if the municipality in the future needed to open a landfill or a transfer site or what have you, that's up to us to make that decision.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'm about to call the question. Those in favor? I'm gonna have to record this vote because I can't tell. So I'm gonna call the question. Councillor Barrett?
Yay.
Councillor Morel?
Nay.
Councillor Smale?
Yay?
Deputy Mayor Taylor?
Nay.
Oh my goodness, what a spot to put the mayor in. The mayor voted yay. And so the motion is carried, thank you. And so now, item 8B, PSAB budget addendum, Councillor Morel.
Okay, now which, is that, is this? Is this the account, dispersal account, no, okay. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Barrett, that municipal council approves the 2018 PSAB budget addendum report, which meets the requirements of Ontario Regulation 284/09, as recommended by the Committee of the Whole, Administration and Finance.
Thank you very much. The motion is on the floor. Discussion, if any. We discussed this at Administration and Finance. Hearing none, those in favor, please signify. Motion is carried. And I'm going to 8C, the Public Works Fleet, and that is Councillor Snail. Or, have I got it right?
Yep, thank you.
Sorry.
Moved by myself, second by Deputy Mayor Taylor. The municipal council directs staff to complete the necessary repairs required for the 2003 single axle T8 vehicle and to adjust the scope of the work under pavement preservation as a contingency measure to keep approximately $25,000 available to offset potential deficit in vehicle repair, and undertake a full condition assessment of heavy vehicles and public works, and to return to the committee with an update vehicle maintenance that incorporates recommended improvements to the program as recommended by the Committee of the Whole, Public Works, Environmental Services and Facilities.
Thank you very much. Again, long discussion at the Public Works. Further discussion, if any? Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. And moving now then to 8D, which is the Township 2017 Township Financial Statement. And who's got that? Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Snail, that this council receives and approves the 2017 Township Financial Statement.
That's the other financial statement.
Yeah, well, there should be really two motions. I'm gonna take this motion and deal with it. But there really should be two motions. One should be to receive the audited financial statement. The other one should be to receive the auditor's report. But I'm gonna deal with this one as it's written. Receives and approves the 2017 Township Financial Statement. I'm going to add to that with the approval of the mover and the seconder and the auditor's report thereon. Mover and seconder?
Sure. Councillor Snail?
Fine.
I'm gonna call. Okay, I'm gonna call the question on the motion as amended. I just marked it friendly amendment. That the municipal council receives and approves the 2017 Township Financial Statement and the auditor's report thereon. Those in favor, please signify. Motion is carried. And so now I'm at 8E, which is the parking bylaw amendment. Councillor Barrett.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Morel that municipal council amend bylaw 2018-29 to delete no face Schedule A, amend bylaw 2018-29 to add Schedule B for the Part 1 set fines, approve and draft short form wording for the parking bylaw Part 1 set fines, and direct staff to submit for approval.
Okay, so I understand a little hiccup here that we're just gonna clean up. So, discussion if any?
So this is just a change through you, Mr. Mayor. This, you say just a little hiccup, this is just a change in some of the fees? I wasn't at the, okay, my head's not on here.
Yeah, sorry, through the chair, has not been previously discussed at a committee meeting. Staff only became aware of the recommendation from the Attorney General's office to make the change just last week. And the suggestion was to just make this very clerical change. So as my understand it is to take the Schedule B set fines that you see on the back page, had been part of Schedule A, and the Attorney General's office recommended they come out into a separate schedule.
Oh,
Those two
Just
things
those two things.
be
That's right.
put into a separate schedule.
That's right.
Okay.
thank you.
So no change in substance.
Nothing, no,
Just
just,
thought I was losing.
yeah.
We had a short discussion, I couldn't remember it all.
Yeah.
Okay, All right, so now, any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. And so now I'm at item number 9 on the agenda, which is the receiving of the correspondence package, and I see that there's an amendment on the table. So, Councillor Smale, you have the motion.
Thank you, moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Taylor, that municipal council receives the correspondence listed for the following dates as previously circulated, May 28th, June 14th, both of 2018.
Sorry, I got that wrong. The amendment is not for
No,
this
no,
item.
no, it's for the,
Nobody corrected me.
it's for the other one.
That was very nice of you.
Thought maybe you added June 25th and I wasn't lucky.
Okay. All right, this is the correspondence, moved by Smale, seconded by, who was it again?
Myself.
Taylor. Okay, those in favor of the motion? That's carried. Sorry about that. Okay, so that's the correspondence. Now we're at the disbursement sheet, which is item number 10, and I guess that's where the amended sheet comes. And Deputy Mayor Taylor, you have that one.
So, moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Smale, that municipal council approves payment of municipal invoices circulated and dated as follows. And that is the amended one, okay. Report dated, June 1st, 2018, $320,366.80, June 11th, 2018, $31,949.96, and June 20th, 2018, $1,824,372.88, for a total of $2,176,689.64.
Thank you very much. Motion's on the table, discussion if any. Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. And we're now at item number 11 on the agenda, which is various bylaws coming forward tonight. Start with bylaw number 11A, the zoning amendment for Burl, 720, 722, County Road 2, Councillor Smale.
Thank you, moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Taylor, that the mover be granted leave to introduce a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 2012-35 as amended Burl 720-722, County Road 2, as this shall constitute first and second reading thereof.
Discussed at a public meeting and previously at committee. Further discussion, if any? Hearing none, those in favor? Unanimous approval, proceed to third reading.
Moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Taylor, that a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 2012-35 as amended Borough 720-722, County Road 2, be now read a third time, finally passed, signed, and sealed, number 2018-34.
And third reading, those in favor? Motion is carried. And bylaw 11B, the Main Street Revitalization Funding Agreement, Councillor Morel.
Yes, moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Barrett, that the mover be granted leave to introduce a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a municipal funding agreement with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and this shall constitute first and second reading thereof.
And this was discussed, brought forward way back at the Roma conference in January. And the money was all transferred from the province to AMO, and now AMO's just getting the agreements out. Anyway, first and second reading, those in favor? Motion is carried unanimously. Third reading.
Again, moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Barrett, that a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a municipal funding agreement with the Association of the Municipalities of Ontario. We now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, in number 2018-35.
Third reading, those in favor, please signify. Motion is carried, thank you. And bylaw 11C, the pregnancy and parental leave for members of council policy. And Councillor Barrett, you have that one.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Morel, that the mover be granted leave to introduce a bylaw to adopt a policy for pregnancy and parental leave for members of council, and that this shall constitute first and second reading thereof.
Motion on the table, discussion if any. Hearing none, those in favor. Motion carried unanimously. Third reading.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Morel, that bylaw to adopt a policy for pregnancy and parental leave for members of council be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 2018-36.
Thank you very much. Third reading, those in favor? Motion is carried, thank you. And 11D, the financing agreement to replace the environmental services vehicle. Councilor Morel.
Yes, moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Barrett that the mover be granted leave to introduce a bylaw to authorize the execution of a financing agreement with Scotiabank for the purchase of a new vehicle, and this shall constitute first and second reading thereof.
Okay, first and second reading, discussion, hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried unanimously. Third reading.
Moved by myself, seconded again by Councilor Barrett, that a bylaw to authorize the execution of a financing agreement with Scotiabank for the purchase of a new vehicle be now read a third time, finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 2018-37.
Third reading, those in favor? Carried unanimously. Go ahead to, oh, sorry. Item number 11F, which is the open air burn bylaw. Councilor Smale.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Taylor, that the mover be granted leave to introduce a bylaw to prescribe the precautions and conditions under which fires may be set in open air, and this shall constitute first and second reading thereof.
Okay, discussed again at committee meeting. So further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor? Carried unanimously. Please proceed to third reading.
Moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Taylor, that a bylaw to prescribe the precautions and conditions under which fires may be set in open air be now read a third time, finally passed, signed, and sealed, and numbered 2018-38.
Those in favor of third reading? Motion is carried. And proceeding then to 11F, the grain elevator tariffs. Councilor Barrett.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Morel, that the mover be granted leave to introduce a bylaw to establish a tariff of grain elevator charges, and this shall constitute first and second reading thereof.
Discussed at the Port Management Committee meeting. Those in favor of first and second reading? Carried unanimously. Please proceed to third reading.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Morel, that a bylaw to establish a tariff of grain elevator charges be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 2018-39.
Thank you very much. Third reading. Those in favor? Motion is carried. Time for the July 1st submission to the Canada Grains Commission. And so 11G, the Port Master Agreement. Councilor Smale.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Taylor, that the mover be granted leave to introduce a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a master agreement with 9618732 Canada Inc. and Daily Dust Control Inc. and this shall constitute first and second reading thereof.
Okay, again discussed at the Port Management Committee meeting. Further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor of first and second reading? Carried unanimously. Third reading.
Moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Taylor, that a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the master agreement with 9618732 Canada Inc. and Daily Dust Control Inc. be now read a third time, finally passed, signed, and sealed, number 2018-4.
Thank you very much. Third reading. Third reading. Those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. And then item 11A from the Port of Johnstown, the vacant land lease agreement. Again, coming forward from the Port Management Committee, Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Smale, that the mover be granted leave to introduce a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a vacant land lease agreement for port property Daily Dust Control Inc. and this shall constitute first and second reading thereof.
First and second reading. Those in favor? Motion is carried unanimously. Third reading.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Smale, that a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a vacant land lease agreement for port property Daily Dust Control Inc. be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 2018-41.
Thank you very much. Third reading. Those in favor? Motion is carried. And 11I, the parking bylaw amendment. Councilor Barrett.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Morel, that the mover be granted leave to introduce a bylaw to amend bylaw 2018-29 to provide for the regulation of parking within the township of Edwardsburg, Cardinal, and this shall constitute first and second reading thereof.
Okay, a little hiccup there. Those in favor of first and second reading? Carried unanimously. Third reading, please.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Morel that a bylaw to amend bylaw 2018-29 to provide for the regulation of parking within the township of Edwardsburg. Parking will be now read the third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 2018-40.
Okay, thank you very much. Those in favor, please signify. Motion is carried. Thank you. And so now I'm at item number 12 on the agenda, and item number 12 is the CAO's administrative update. I'm going to ask Councillor Morel to bring the motion forward, and then we'll have a chat with the CAO.
Okay, let's see, moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Barrett, the municipal council receives the CAO's administrative report as presented.
Okay, and I'll hold motion. Thank you very much to the CAO for the report. Let's do it this way. We'll start at Councillor Smale, go around the table, and then I'll let you address the holes.
I have nothing.
Nothing?
Good report, thank you very much, Tim.
Just to point out that the June 27th official plan review, I'm at the high school for the commence kinder, so I won't be able to be there.
Okay, so I think everybody knows that I'm away, so the other three members of council, I think.
Must be there or you won't have one.
That's right.
Okay, anything else, Councillor Barron?
Thanks.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, my turn? Okay, there's a few things, I just wanna, oh God, my finger here, excuse me, I push it on this, I've gotta start doing it with my left hand and then I don't lose it all the time. Sorry about that. Anyway, I guess where it says building bylaw, I noted that, I think I'm sad to hear that Mr. Wheeler is ending his contract with the township. I hope better things have happened for him in the meantime, and that's why he's departing. I thought he was an excellent young gentleman who was doing a very good job, and it's probably one of the more thankless jobs, to be in, and there are not too many accolades, but I think he, from the very first day, presented a very good image for the township and continued that throughout. And I'm speaking, not that I work with him on a daily basis, but I think he got things started, and along with the guidance of the present building official, Mr. Hopkins, I think they got things rolling with a more assertive type of, lawns and care and updating our township. So I was sad to see that. And as I move along here, I noted the official plan review for myself. I noted that I was glad to see the extremely full turnout uptake on registration for summer camp. Also, I just wondered, the Procter & Gamble Day of Caring, it was June 20th, and I represented the township at the event, and they had their lunch and said a few words of thanks. And I just want to remind that we talked about sending a letter to P&G and commending Mike Lindbergh and his entire crew for the excellent work. I hope that's followed through. I just wanted to remind. There was one question there, Cardinal Wastewater. I do have a question with that. It says investigation is underway to respond to Ingredion with respect to problems they have identified with their service. I wasn't aware there was a concern, but are we at liberty to discuss that, what their concern is with the service, or why is this a new thing, or is it just a problem that started out small, or what seems to be their issue with our service?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll respond to that. The issue has been that they have been struggling with some sewer backups in their building, and we are trying to work in consultation with them and cooperation with them to determine where the problem is. Our concern, of course, is that that's a new service. The James Street service was just installed, so.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yes, so we want to be sure that the issue is on the other side of the property line. And perhaps the Director of Operations can provide you with more details on what's been done to date. I know we have done some closed circuit TV work.
So we're hoping that the problem is on their side of the fence.
I think we're pretty sure it is.
All indications would lead us to believe that it is a private portion where the issue resides.
Okay, but, but we haven't come to a definitive resolution of that?
We have certainly provided Ingredion with that initial determination. We are having the engineers that designed James Street reviewing the public portion to ensure that we haven't missed anything, that there's no outstanding variables involved. But reasonably confident that the issue is on the private portion, and they are going to undertake the work that we've identified, and that should correct the issue.
Go ahead.
Okay, and I just, I thank you for the response. And the County Road 2 drain, I had a question with that. It says an on-site meeting was held June 14th with appointed engineering firm Robinson and Associates. They'll compile comments and begin site work to prepare the report. Was there anything done? I know there was a party or a delegation or concern about drainage in Cedar Grove Road or something with that we thought we might tie into that big project. Was that County Road 2 project looked at in the big picture of encompassing any concerns in Cedar Grove Road, or was it just not feasible or not realistic to encompass Cedar Grove?
I believe the engineer's statement with respect to the area north of the 401 is that it just simply was too early to know whether the area would go that far.
Okay.
There's been some struggle to determine what drainage crossings there may be on the CN main line, and as well as the spur lines. We got some really good anecdotal information from the residents that attended that public meeting, so I'm sure the engineer will find out how far the limits of that drain go, but we're just not there yet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for
So-
an excellent report once again.
So I hesitate to bring this up, but I'm just gonna mention it. So on page 1 of 4, upcoming meeting schedule, I checked my calendar, and I think Tuesday is July the 3rd.
It is.
Yes.
And the other thing that I wanted to ask about, actually two things. Under the Cardinal wastewater paragraph there, a draft agreement for disposal of non-GMO wash water from Ingredion has been forwarded to them for comment. So I'm just very interested to see that little request is moving forward. So let me just, if I may, to the CAO, through the CAO, just ask a question. I'm assuming from this comment that we're able, technically, to provide the treatment of their non-GMO wash water. Is that correct? Am I reading the right conclusion there?
There are some parameters and believe me, I don't have all the technical stuff. There are some parameters with respect to solids that we may not be able to reach or meet all the time, but I'll defer to the Director of Operations to discuss that further, because certainly that's outside my area.
So if you would, please.
Certainly, there are some, within that initial draft agreement that we've sent to Ingredion, there were several conditions that they would have to be able to meet with respect to that. And if they were able to demonstrate that could be met in those sampling requirements, we feel that the quantity of waste that they're going to generate and bring, that we should be able to remain still well within our C of A requirements for discharge.
Okay, so the question that I have would go something like this. Prior to the draft agreement being sent to them, was there a good dialogue between our folks and their folks so that they know that the restrictions that we're facing and can understand the restrictions that we're placing within the draft agreement?
I would say that there was a reasonably good conversation, and considering that they do operate a waste treatment facility, they should be quite aware of some of those requirements.
Okay, thank you. And then just one more question, if I may. On page 2 of 4, with regard to the 730 truck stop, do we have any kind of a progress update on where we stand with the insurance company relative to the fire costs? Have we had any discussions with our, the firm that's representing us in an interface with the receiver. We talked to that individual recently.
We had an email from, the solicitor a week ago or so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, she's still working on the file, it has not died, but
Has it gone to the receiver?
I'm sorry,
Has the file that we submitted to our lawyer gone over to the receiver, the bankruptcy receiver?
I would assume so. Yeah.
Okay, so we don't know if he's followed through with the insurance company, because we were to work together on putting pressure on the insurance company to pay.
Yeah, no, I think the insurance company is receiving pressure, and certainly we've engaged, our own insurance broker to assist from this end to put pressure on the insurance.
Well, we have.
Oh, yes, yeah,
Oh, okay, just don't have any results at this
no,
point.
that's correct.
Okay, so you can go ahead.
It's actually missing from the report, and I'm just wondering if there has been any dialogue between the township and the Sioux Nation with respect to the funding for the concept of the dock going in down at the, have we gotten any discussion?
Mike Spencer is working on that project, and we are coordinating to get the divers to go and take a look at the underpinnings at the same time as they're there for other work to do with our environmental services department. And they were delayed, and I'm not sure for how long.
Yes, they were. They did arrive late last week. The divers were there, so.
Can we add that to the report for ongoing, just to sort of be able to follow it along? Because the recreation committee, when we meet, we don't really have Mike there, we have, okay, they'd like to just kind of keep abreast.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, hearing none, then I have a move by Councillor Morel, second by Councillor Barrett, that municipal council receives the CAO's administrative report as presented.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just a couple things that you didn't.
Oh, you're right, sorry. Got ahead of myself, sorry. I promised you an opportunity.
I do want to make note of the fact that we have 2 residential properties coming for tax sale. The advertisements will be going out, we expect the tenders will close mid-August, I think the 15th in actual fact. So that's something to be cognizant of, because while one residential property is not occupied, the other is. So that always creates a few problems. We're doing everything we can to speak with those folks, but we have not been able to speak with them face to face.
Okay, just before you get in, I just want to clarify one thing. Do we have an understanding that when those advertisements appear, that they will show as well as the roll number, the civic number?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
There's no
Through you,
question.
Mr. Mayor, are those properties owner occupied or tenant occupied?
We have not been able to gain any kind of contact with the people occupying the house to determine who they are. We've knocked on the door, and we will continue to knock on the door. The treasurer and I will take another stab at it this week.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, yes?
In the process, once it's listed, is there, and if they pay it by a certain time, is it, or is this it for them, like there's no way to go back?
In actual fact, they can pay and retain ownership right up until and beyond close of tenders. There's lots of case law where folks have been more or less evicted from the property for not paying taxes, and the courts have actually allowed them back into their property and redeem the taxes. So
But they've had to redeem the tax.
oh, absolutely, and redeem the taxes, but it's just, yeah, it's really right up until the moment the deed is transferred, they can still come and redeem and get the property.
Okay, but once the transfer goes through, they would never reverse the transfer?
They have done
They
it,
have done it.
depends on the circumstances, that they have to go to court, and it's out of our hands at that point.
Thank you.
Right up until the transfer of deed.
Oh, yes, yeah, the courts are very careful not to take people's property.
Yeah.
And I guess the other thing I wanted to point out just quickly is our summer day camp program has just been crazy this year. We have waiting lists and everything. And what we did not have good uptake on was that leaders in training program. Remember we had that
Yes.
going? So Mike and I, between us and the staff in the recreation department, have decided that we would cancel the Leaders in Training program so that we could bring that counselor over to the day camp, but thus open up more spots. So we will be having as many as 40 kids in each day camp,
But no leaders in training?
but no Leaders in Training. There's only 3.
Oh, yes,
registered
okay,
for it, so,
fair enough, a fair trade then.
Yeah.
Okay, any other question? No, I'm not out of line here
No,
yet.
no, okay.
Okay, so now I'll call, go ahead.
So just a follow-up question, Mr. Mayor, is there an opportunity for any of those, like, what's the age of the leader in training applicants?
I believe it was 12 to 16.
And what's the age of our counselors, our camp counselors?
We typically would hire 16 and older.
Is there an opportunity for, and I know this isn't the place to discuss it, but for like a junior counselor
Oh,
position?
yeah,
or-
we on a volunteer basis,
Yeah.
and the kids use it for their high school,
Right.
community service hours, yeah, we do that.
So those 3 individuals would be
Sure.
availed of that opportunity
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and it would be mutually beneficial?
Yes.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, okay. Good. Glad you asked that question. All right, CEO's report, received as presented. Those in favor? The motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, so now I'm at council inquiries or notices of motion. Does anyone have any notices of motion to bring forward or any inquiries to bring forward? If not, I'm about to move on to, go ahead.
I don't have either one or the other of those, but I do have an announcement to make you aware that the council and staff and the public, I will not be running in the upcoming municipal election.
Yeah, howdy.
Just thought I'd make that announcement to everybody. Staff had anything, I just mentioned to them prior to the, well, just after Lynn's presentation, I told them I was gonna make them, if this would be the appropriate time, and the time is there, and the time is up. So, thank you.
Well, you could knock me over with a
Thank you,
pin.
thank you, so.
Go
anyway,
ahead.
Well, I wanna be the first to say, Councilor Morel, that, I would like to invite you to, a weenie roast at your place in
yeah.
Johnstown in celebration and in thanks for your service on council. But
Okay.
Jerry, that's,
Okay, thank you.
well, that's breaking news. If we, we should have someone here tweeting this meeting. That's breaking news, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, it is.
And Councilor Morel, in, talking to folks over the last couple of weeks, they are of course very interested in who's running for, positions on council. And they want to know who's running in Ward 1, and they want to know who's running for deputy mayor, and they want to know who's running in the Ward 3 spot, and they want to know who's running for mayor. And nobody asked me, I'm telling you, I had more than a half dozen people ask me, no one asked me who was running in Ward 2. And I said, and I'm not sure about Ward 2, and they said, well, Jerry's gonna run. And so, and they all seemed happy with that, so.
If they're happy, that's too good of
That's just a testament to
Okay.
your service.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Well, as I say, you could knock me over with a pin. I just want to say it's been a pleasure working with you over the years. I'm disappointed.
Okay, well, thank you, thank you. It's been a real run, I guess I'd say. It's 8 years, a lot of good things have happened, and anyway, it's time to spend more time doing things and reading more things rather than council papers and items there and stuff. It's, maybe pick up the guitar and do some things again, a little more,
Well,
let's say a little more, less stressful, but less ominous, I guess
yeah,
the word is.
less intense.
Less intense, yeah.
Well, disappointed, but wish you the very best. And I'm not going to go any further, but I know you've got 4 grandkids, and I know they mean a lot to you.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Any other counselor bombshells? Okay, all right, I'll go into item 14 then. Item 14 is the mayor's report.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Smale, that municipal council receives the mayor's report as presented.
Okay, so I'll hold it on the table here for a minute. There is a bit of a report to make. So I've been having email exchanges back and forth with Greenergy over Thursday, Friday, and today. And Greenergy will be making a press release concerning their proposed project at the Jones Rail Yard. I had asked them if they would have the press release out in time for tonight's meeting. That wasn't possible, but she assures me that she will get the press release out sometime towards the end of this week. I'll circulate it to the CAO, and she can circulate it to members of council when we receive it. In anticipation of what it might say, I had a discussion with Mr. Jones today. He assures me that although there's nothing signed, negotiations with Greenergy are going along well, and he did report to me that they've had 2,500 hits on this website that they've set up to provide people with an opportunity to question them, and out of the 2,500 hits, they have not had a single concern or a single question. So I think that gives them a high level of confidence. Speaking a little bit further about Jones, I was to talk to the CAO ahead of time. I forgot to do that because I was thinking about other things. Did we receive his site plan control agreement before 4 o'clock today?
No, he called and said he was gonna run right up here with it, and I said, oh, that's fine, don't go out of your way, we'll deal with it when we get it. He is happy with the agreement. He's filed his building permit application, and we'll move it through the process. I expect to have it in front of CDC next week, and we'll let them review it, and then if it followed its normal course of events, it would be then approved in late July. I don't think anyone's gonna be holding anybody's permits up based on that. Everybody's pretty happy. He's had all the engineering work done for the wastewater management, or stormwater management, rather. And, it's fine.
Well, it's just that he tells me that his discussions with CN are now concerning phase 2, what he calls phase 2, and he makes it clear to me that what he originally envisaged as phase 2 and phase 3 would actually all take place at the same time. And he's got a fair amount of pressure to get this going. So if it's necessary to have a special council meeting, I'm sure we can work one either half hour prior to admin finance or half hour prior to public works.
Yeah, that was my thought too. And if the Greenergy announcement goes forward and they begin their work, that's gonna require an amendment to his site plan control agreement. So there's lots of opportunity for review.
Okay, I just wanted to make a few comments next with regard to HMCS Moncton, which we announced at the port day we thought would be coming to Port of Johnstown. And the reason we thought that is because they asked us that. They asked us, HMCS Moncton requests to come alongside. Now they said Port of Prescott, 26, 27, 28 July. We said to them, okay, no problem, just remember, Port of Prescott is now Port of Johnstown. Well, in order to make sure that that was fully understood, Robert the port general manager has gone back and forth with them several times, and in fact, they want to go to Prescott, the town dock at Prescott. So that has finally been clarified today. So HMCS Moncton is going to the town dock at Prescott. It's been invited there by Parks Canada, and Parks Canada is wanting to do some things centered around Fort Wellington, and they wanted the ship closer to Fort Wellington. So that was, and so apparently, potential technical difficulties aside, it will be going to the town dock at Prescott. Go ahead.
And though unfortunate it's not coming to our port, it's a Kingston class vessel. It'll be very interesting, different than the MCDVs that we've seen.
No, same class.
Is it not a Kingston class?
Yeah, but it's the same class, MCD.
Same as the Ottawa?
Same as Goose Bay.
It's the same as Goose Bay.
Same as Goose Bay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was a destroyer class.
No,
And I wondered how they would fit it.
they wouldn't.
And I also wonder how they got an MCDV in there, but,
As I say, technical difficulties aside,
yeah, okay. Well, anyway, it'll be nice.
yeah, and it'll be downtown Prescott, draw people downtown, so that'll be good.
I
Nice.
thought it was the same as the Ottawa, so it's smaller.
Yeah.
That's why I was thinking it would never get in there.
Okay, so, another thing I wanna make council aware of is that on Friday afternoon late, we had a request from the town of Gananoque if we would send a letter to the people that are in charge of disposing of the Parliament Hill Canada 150 ice rink. That's the boards and the ice plant. And apparently, Gord Brown was working very hard to get that asset transferred to the town of Gananoque for this ice pad that he wanted to see built in Gananoque. So, we've been asked to supply a letter or a resolution of support. Because the letter just came on Friday, there's no opportunity to get it on tonight's agenda. So what we have done is, the clerk has, and the CAO have prepared a letter of support, and I'll be signing that letter of support and sending it tomorrow to try to get that into Gananoque. Now, as well, in connection with the same thing, the Thousand Islands Community Development Corporation will hold their annual general meeting at 10 o'clock next Friday at Ivy Lee, and they've asked all of the mayors in United Counties to attend because they're planning a special announcement out of Gord Brown's office or in relation to one of the projects that he was working on. So we've all been asked to attend, and I will go there and represent our township. With regard to Grenville Community Futures Corporation, they held their annual general meeting here at the mill on Friday morning, and I was, Councillor Morrell was there. I was pleased to bring greetings on behalf of the township, and I managed in 2 minutes to get in the names of at least 15 businesses in our township. And the last thing I just wanted to report is that I spoke today to the principal of the company that's bought Grenville Mutual Insurance Building. They are proceeding with renovations and repairs, and they have started to move their offices out of Ottawa into the building, and I think his goal is to be fully in the building by the end of the week. And I'm gonna try to catch up with him sometime later in this week. So that's my report, and I have a motion on the table, moved by Taylor, seconded by Smale, that Municipal Council receives the mayor's report as presented. Discussion, if any? Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried, thank you. And I'm at item number 15 on the agenda, and item number 15 on the agenda is the question period. Mr. Davis.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a question for Deputy Mayor Taylor and Councilor Morrell. Could you explain to me why you wouldn't support a motion to have control over a waste site being in our municipality? Like, what's the rationale there that you wouldn't support having that power?
I'm happy to answer.
I just
Or I can
don't-
wait till later.
Okay. Okay, short answer.
Short answer, the fact that we really don't have the expertise as explained, as the motion that was there indicated. And municipalities do have the right to comment and say yay or nay, and we said yay many years ago to the ED19, and then it got turned around. So you have a change of council members. The yes and no on these things can change. The province has the expertise. We are a child of the province, if you know, when you consider municipalities as a whole, and it should rest with the province. And they're going to do what's best for the whole and not for just one area. So the expertise I don't think is here. I don't want to have to put my tax dollars into developing it here, because it's better at that upper level.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, Councilor Morrell, I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah, similar comments. if every, similar to what Jeff Earl said, and I don't always agree with Councilor Earl from Brockville, if every council, local council had to say, there'd be nobody be a willing host. It seems like there's a double standard. We're willing to send our garbage presently to Moose Creek, and, but we don't want anything in our backyard. And if every council had a dump in their backyard, there'd be, just with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, there'd be 444 dumps. So, and to me, that'd be a bigger catastrophe with the number of dumps in each township. And what's, South Dundas is filling up, what's to prevent them from maybe joining with us and so forth, and working together in a bigger area, or if this thing ever goes through with ED19, why can't they send their garbage here rather than them having a dump and so forth, us a dump, them a dump, and it's almost similar to, and the cost, I tried to highlight the cost, that, you know, of cleaning up after a dump is closed, that there's an ongoing cost to the township, and that, as Deputy Mayor Taylor said, I just don't think we want to get in the cost to our residents, and everybody, you know, that's one of the issues that people are having with the government's trying to maintain costs, control costs, and then the closure costs and so forth. We're still having closure costs with Scott Road. And what's the other, again, Jeff Earl's comment, but yeah, it's like what was it, Herbert Hoover in 1928 said, well, we should have a chicken in every pot and a car in every garage and so forth. Well, we should, I don't think that the town of Westport should have its own dump. If 600 people, where are they going to find it? You know, there's got to be a master plan, a bigger plan, and we are not the experts. We're the ones that most of the experts are. We're against things. We're either not in my backyard in Imbies, we're either nopes, not the planet Earth, or we're either caves. Citizens against virtually everything. So it always comes down to that. And sometimes you have to look at the greater good. And yeah, it's a good example is up in Georgian Bank in Carden when they've got problems with disposing of radioactive sites from the Bruce nuclear reactor. They've got all the jobs and everything there, and the sites they're saying is there in the ground, and they've got the potential to develop a geological depository, and people are against it, even in their own backyard, when they've had the benefits of the plant there. So what I'm saying is that, you know, I don't think there should be a dump in every little Tom, Dick, and Harry area and so forth. I think it, as the Deputy Mayor has conveyed, it's sometimes the bigger the region, whatever it is better, and it takes the onus off the individual responsibility.
Okay, question asked, question answered.
Can I just comment on what you're saying?
Through the chair.
Through the chair. We just, you know, the Ottawa paper was full last week of comments and articles about Tomlinson, who is actually the people that are looking at what we were going to do 4.5 kilometers from Cardinal. It's not a Spencerville issue, it's a Cardinal issue. So we look at Tomlinson, same name, same people.
Excuse me.
It's a different contract.
I'm done.
It's a different contract.
Councilor Morel, I just want to get in here because I don't want this to deteriorate. The motion is passed. I was put in an awkward position. I voted in favor of the motion. The motion is carried. But I just want to deal with two things. Number one, there is no talk with Tomlinson, period. Number two, there is no mega dump, and there never has been a mega dump. The most that was ever talked about was 50,000 tons. Now, I'm not a dummy. I read the audit, I've seen the references to the Auditor General's report from Ottawa. I understand totally. And I understand the issue that Ottawa is facing. Members of County Council are not immune, and they're not illiterate. They read those kinds of reports, and I suspect that that report of the Auditor General from Ottawa has had a big influence. There has been no discussion about that report at County Council, and I will remind you that this question of what happens with this 600 acres is a County Council decision. There's been no discussion of that report, but those mayors are not blind, dumb, and out of the picture. They can see what's happened. we're not about to do silly things. And I don't wanna go any further, and I don't wanna invoke debate here, because this issue is before the Environmental Review Tribunal, best it left there until after September. And I believe the date now that we have is September the 14th. So, if there are any other questions, we'll entertain other questions, but ED 19 has had its run for tonight. No other questions? I'm looking for, there is no closed session, so I'm looking for the confirmatory bylaw. Councillor Barrett.
I would definitely love to oblige. Is this it here? May I?
Okay.
Yeah, no, you,
Is that one?
yes.
But the mover, okay. Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Brett, the mover to grant Aiken's bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by resolution of District Council first and second reading thereof.
Okay, first and second reading of the confirmatory bylaw, those in favor? And proceed to third reading.
Okay, moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Barrett, that the bylaw to confirm, ratify, adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by resolution be now read a third time, finding passed, signed, sealed, for number 2018-42.
Okay, and those in favor, please signify. And that's carried. And so now, I think the only thing I need is the
Moved by
motion
myself,
to adjourn.
seconded by Deputy Mayor Taylor, the municipal council is now adjourned at 8:33 p.m.
And I don't think there's any discussion there. Those in favor? Motion is carried.